Hello, I'm Robin and I'm a normal alcoholic. Today I'm going to combine two ideas for videos that I've had. Well, one of my own ideas and one suggestion from a viewer or request. How are alcoholics different to normal people, or are they any different? And then I had a suggestion from Julie asking whether alcoholism ran in my family. So the quick answer is yes and no. No, it's not rife in my family. It's not, there's not a lot of history of it going through the generations. I have one uncle who had a severe issue with alcohol. So that brings up the question of, does alcohol run in the family? Again, there's no straightforward. I've seen people on both sides of the spectrum. I've met people who, because of me talking about alcoholism and because of doing this channel, they speak to me and say, my parents were alcoholics. It swore me off drinking heavily or swore me off alcohol completely and never became an issue for them. They were able to drink normally, no issues. There's other people who are addicts or are alcoholics who say, when I was young, my parents drank heavily, they were alcoholics, it caused so much issues. It made me promise myself that I'd never do that, but they still end up becoming alcoholics. And then there's other people who have no history in their family, but they've developed a problem. So there's no set rule, And I think one big question this brings up is it nature or nurture? And again, it's just not straightforward. I think there will be a genetic component. There will be some people that maybe are more likely to become alcoholics. As many studies as the scientists want to conduct, they're never going to have a conclusive answer. But it might be that there's a gene that makes you more likely to have an addictive personality. I believe that there will be a genetic factor to mental health issues, and suffering from mental health issues can make you more likely to become dependent on a substance. But similarly, I think there's a nurturing aspect. You could have no genetic or mental health issues, but you could be brought up in an environment by individuals in a way that makes you develop insecurities and then develop these dependencies on alcohol or drugs. So I think when you hear people say, oh, it runs in the family, it might not necessarily be a genetic issue. It could be that the disruptive nature of being brought up by alcoholic parents means that issues arise that cause you to, again, need to latch onto something and become alcoholic yourself. Not because it's a genetic thing, because it's a passed on nurturing thing. So yeah, there's no right or wrong answer. There are people who will always be an exception to the rule. But me personally, I think whatever issues, whatever genetic things passed down through my family, it hasn't affected anyone except for my uncle and me. So who knows? But this brings me on to my other idea, and that was, how are alcoholics or addicts different to non-alcoholics or non-addicts? I think I've said this before. There's common phrases or sayings that go around recovery circles or communities. And one of them is people like to say, oh, we feel things more deeply, and that's why we end up needing alcohol to deal with our emotions. And when I first got into recovery, I kind of believed that. I was like, oh, because I'm so emotional, that's why I couldn't handle everything. That's why I ended up needing alcohol to numb my senses and deal with life. But as time goes on, it's like, well, everyone has stress. Everyone has worries. Who are we to say that we feel things more deeply than others? And also doing my counseling course, I'm coming to realize that everyone has the same issues. Everyone has the same mental blocks. Everyone develops certain elements of denial towards how they see themselves and how they see potential issues in themselves. There's people on my course who have said, I know that I have certain issues that I need to work through. And I just think, well, why haven't you? It's because they don't want to have to do something. It's not wanting to admit that something in us is so wrong that it needs fixing. It's holding on to that idea that we're okay. You could be in denial about aspects of your personality or your ways of thinking that are actually having a negative impact on your life, on your relationships. And these things unchecked will always get worse. Whether you go to therapy, whether you read some self-help books, whether you start meditation, whether you start keeping a diary, whatever it is, you got to do something about it. But if one of these things at some point in your life as you were growing up meant that you had a drink or had a drug and that helped, and you then latched onto it, then you're starting on that path of becoming an alcoholic or addict. Yeah, when I think about this kind of thing, my brain just runs away with so many thoughts. I think the long and short of it is I don't think that addicts and alcoholics feel emotions more. I think it's just that somewhere along the way, we started using alcohol to deal with that issue. And once you start using alcohol, the issue will always gradually increase. It will gradually develop. Your use of alcohol to deal with it gradually increases, making the issue worse, meaning the alcohol use goes up. It's self-perpetuating. So I think anyone could end up being an alcoholic. They don't have to have a history. They don't have to have been brought up in a dysfunctional environment. They don't have to have had mental health issues. They don't have to have had genetic traits. It just means that at some point they had a problem that they didn't deal with in the right way. I think about this a lot because I think, at what point could I have changed the way I was living, thinking, dealing with stuff? Is there anything I could have done which would have stopped me becoming an alcoholic? And again, I just don't know. I think of some of the issues I've had, and I think, how could my parents potentially have dealt with that differently? How could they have nurtured me in a different way? But whenever I analyze one little thing like that, I then go, well, no, they were doing what they thought was right. They were doing their best for me. And I then think, okay, what would that have led to? And long and short, this cycle of thinking goes on and on and on and on and on. And there's no way of covering every base. You can be the most intelligent, I could be like the most qualified psychologist, counselor, most experienced ex-addict in the world. But if I bring up kids, I'm not going to have all the answers. No one does. So, does alcoholism and addiction run in the family? Yes. Is it because of genetics? Maybe. Is it because of the environment? I think more likely. But also anyone can be an alcoholic. And if you are, it doesn't mean you're worse than anyone else. It doesn't mean that you feel things more deeply and more tragically than everyone else. It just means at some point along the way, something's gone wrong and it's escalated to this point. The good news is you can deal with it. You don't have to end up in the rock bottom losing everything. You don't have to end up homeless on the streets, estranged from all your family and friends. You can make a change and deal with it. It's just that most people don't. Most people don't want to deal with it until it's so bad that it's glaringly obvious that they have to admit they have a problem, which is a shame. If you're watching this because you think you might have a problem, don't feel ashamed about having to get help. Don't feel ashamed that you might have something wrong. Just have a bit of courage, try and deal with it, and eventually you'll have a normal, happy life. I hope. Fingers crossed. Touch wood. All right, that was a particularly long ramble, so I'll leave it there.